everybody. Welcome to JCLive, your weekly source for JCL news and fun. I'm your host, Mr. Kurt Ristroff, Publications Chair for the National Junior Classical League, an organization of middle and high school students in classical courses. And with us today is a very special guest. Please welcome to the show Irene Calderon, the NJCL Editor. Irene, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. Excited to be here.
Happy to have you. In honor of interviewing you and working with you tonight, I'm not wearing my normal NJCL Publications chair polo. I am instead wearing my coveted, precious Team Editor t-shirt, which is something that all NJCL and NSCL editors have and are eligible to wear. We all bring them to national convention and we wear them on our on the state t-shirt day, which is usually the third day of convention. So each shirt is personalized. It says Team Editor on the front, and then on the back it says your last name and the year that you were in office.
Nice.
Like so. And there are certain rules around it because if some people are both in JCL Editor and in SCL Editor, and in that case, your number is the number of the year you first held National Editor office. It's all very, very laid down. So you're going to get one that says Calderon 21.
Ooh,
And that'll come in the spring. Yeah. So, welcome to the show. For those of you who are in the chat, you've probably noticed that like last week's show, this is a pre-recorded show. So we are, I'm still on holiday. Irene has graciously offered to have her interview as a pre-recorded show. I believe she's going to be in the chat during the premiere of this show. So if you have questions for her or comments about any of the things we talk about, she'll be available for that, which is awesome. Other than that, it's going to be a normal JCLive show. We'll go into announcements for a minute, and then we'll talk with Irene for a good long while, learn all about her plans for office, her background, her plans for the future, all those kinds of things, as we have done with all of the other NJCL officers this year, and then we'll wrap things up. So, Irene, how was school?
Pretty good. I'm like live stream learning, and that's always fun. So, yeah.
And you're from Ohio, right?
Yes, Cincinnati, Ohio. Yes.
Okay. So, at the time of this recording, which is December 3rd, what's the weather like where you are?
It snowed a couple days ago, actually. I can't see out the windows now because it's dark, but it snowed for like the first time.
But it didn't stick?
So, yeah, very cold.
Okay, gotcha. Well, we'll talk all about you. I'm going to go into the announcements first. We'll get through those. Because this is a pre-recorded show, it's hard to know what the announcements are going to be 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So let's do those. The few announcements that I do know that we have now. So the first one is that it's December, so the December Club of the Month theme is Dining December. Ideas for Club of the Month activities include selling hot cocoa, or doing a virtual or in-person club dinner, or donating canned goods to homeless shelters or food banks, and try and do that drop off in a contactless way if you can. So these are things to consider for the December Club of the Month. Information about Club of the Month and a link to submit is in the description below. The Torch US is going to be something that we talk a lot about on this stream. You can subscribe to it using the link below. Today, like I said, at the time of this recording is December 3rd. So today we just sent out an email with the Winter Torch for all of our subscribers. We'll be talking about that. But every time I send one of those emails, I update the Torch subscription list. And between the last time we sent out one of those emails and this time, 50 people had signed up. So 50 more people had subscribed to the Torch. Would love to see another 50 between now and March. So go ahead and subscribe to the Torch US if you haven't already, so that you can get Irene's beautiful publication directly to your inbox. Remind your teacher to sign up your JCL chapter if you haven't already, and they'll be entered to win some fantastic prizes like these water bottles and stickers and JCL pens. Last but not least, our Our next show next week will be a Florida JCL Spotlight. So we'll have their vice president and president on to talk all about the many initiatives that have been going on in the good state of Florida. Florida JCL is very active, so we'll talk to them. Okay, with that, we're going to switch things back over. Irene, are you still there? It looked like you froze for a second.
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry.
Great. No worries at all. So, for those of you who don't know, my job as publications chair is not actually to run this show. That is, and my job only recently included running all the social media pages for JCL. My main job is actually to work with Irene. It's to work with the NJCL editors. I've been blessed to have 4 outstanding JCL editors over the past 4 years on the committee. So let us get right into it. Could you tell us a little bit about your office and what it is that you do as NJCL editor?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in charge of compiling the Torch US, which is essentially like the official JCL newsletter filled with like fun, engaging articles and updates and stuff. It depends on the season. It's released like every season. There's one per season, and yeah, you should check it out.
Yeah, so the Torch US, our quarterly magazine. How did you get into editing? How did you come to be an editor and run for the position and everything?
Okay, so I guess I started out as the editor for my school Latin club because I was particularly intrigued with like the writing that goes on, and I also liked the graphic design aspect of it. So I started off as editor for my school Latin club, and then I ran for state editor as a sophomore, and now I'm here.
Okay, so what was it like being a state editor for Ohio?
Um, it was kind of difficult because this was when like the coronavirus pandemic started like building up in intensity. So I was able to do like a survey around like Ohio, just like to check in with all of the local editors around the state, see how they were doing, and that was nice. So yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve to it, but still fun.
All
I
right, I
enjoyed.
guess I jumped the gun a little bit because normally the first question I've been asking students when they come on is, can you tell us a little bit about your background in JCL? When you joined, how you joined, why you joined, and how you got from there to here, some of the highlights and things.
Yeah, so I guess my journey started with me joining Latin as a sixth grader because that is when Latin is required in our school. Like we're required to take Latin and another language besides. Like I was taking Spanish too. So then in seventh grade, I chose Latin as my primary language. I was thinking of like building up my vocabulary, like Latin vocabulary, because I thought it would help me in the spelling bee, because that was something I was particularly into at that time in middle school. So that was one of the reasons. And I'd also heard about the state conventions in Ohio, and I thought those would be a fun, interesting thing to go to. And I wanted to see what this JCL community was like for myself. And yeah, um, I joined as a seventh grader, joined Latin officially, and then I started going to state conventions and I had a blast. They were like bigger than I could ever have imagined. And there was so much fun things to do. Like I got really into the testing and the graphic arts and I really, really enjoyed it. And then I went to my first nationals and that just blew my mind. It was like massive, especially spirit. I was like so overwhelmed. It was like so dazzlingly fun. And I just thought maybe I could I became like a school editor and then I became state editor and then I was inspired by like those national officers on the stage and I thought maybe I should take my chance and stuff, see how I do. And then now I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Spirit at Nationals, the first time you do it is something else. You know, the Ohio State Convention roughly, do you know how many students attend that?
We're like a medium-sized state. I think it's like a few hundred. I
Yeah,
don't know the exact number, but it's pretty big.
right. But then you get to nationals, and it's four or
Yeah.
five times bigger than that because usually at the national convention there are between 1,200 and 1,500 students, and when gosh, it's weird to think about 1,500 people in a single room all yelling because we haven't had that in a while, what with COVID and everything. But when we
Yeah.
get back to that, it is a sight to see. And there have been many a JCL video that have started with some B-roll just panning across a field of people doing spirit or a bleacher full of people doing spirit, something like that. So, so your school had a newsletter, right? That you
Yeah.
were and you were editor for it, or you were the club secretary, or what? Because some schools do it
Um,
differently.
I was co-editor. I had another classmate of mine, Abby. We served together, and I edited one like edition of the Vox Latino, which is what we call our school newsletter, and then she edited another one, and then we did a combined one. So, yeah, that was pretty fun.
Gotcha. And what software were you using for that?
We were using Jumag.
Okay, so that's a very popular choice, and that's what you use now as NJCL Editor. It's free. There's a free version, but then there's also a paid version. Um, it is an online publication formatting piece of software. So back in the dim dark days beyond recall, the Torch US used to be a print publication that we would print out and send to every sponsor in the country. And with the idea that they would then display it in their classrooms and people could go and read it. And in 2014 or 15, we changed it to an online publication, which is what it is now. And that way we can email it to people, it can reach many more people, and we can include lots of things like if you read Irene's most recent torch, there's a lot of digital content in there. So could you tell us some about that? Because that's a cool feature.
Um, so what exactly did you mean by digital
Oh, like
content?
hyperlinks and slideshows and
Oh,
embedded
yeah,
videos and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, those are fun. That's like a feature you can do in Jumag. You can like insert links and stuff. Like for example, for this winter torch, some of the officers had links to their emails, and actually the NJCL YouTube channel, one of them had a link to that, and it's pretty fun. Oh, there's also like the sliding pictures thing, which is like my favorite part of like the online Jumag, where it like slides in between pictures, and that's pretty fun to operate. Although it can take a while to load, but that's like the only drawback of it.
Yep. So when you switch to the OJCL torch, and I ought to know the name of the OJCL torch.
It's just that
Is it OJCL?
torch.
Oh, thank goodness. Okay, because different state publications have different names. Was it also that same software?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're a pro long before you became NJCL editor. Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then could you tell us some about your plans for the office this year? When you were first elected, you and I sat down and we had a fun meeting where we talked about all the things you wanted to accomplish this year. Could you tell the audience about what those were and are?
So like my main goals as NJCL editor was to like increase the amount of publication and to increase circulation and stuff. So back in August, I released a survey like asking people what they thought of the Torch US, like how we could improve it. And I incorporated those survey answers into this winter torch, and I'm thinking of doing that for spring and summer as well, just so like the torch can look more like what the viewers want to look like, which would hopefully boost readership and stuff. That was the goal of that. And then I also released this website called JCL Bookshelf, which was a compilation of like state and local publications, just like one home for them so that we could be more united and stuff. And yeah, that that was like, yeah, I did that as well. And then what I'm planning to do for the rest of my term, I'm thinking of releasing this supplemental torch. I mean, that's not the official title, that's like a work in progress. But supplemental torch aimed to like younger aged members so that it's not as like big and imposing. It's like smaller in scale for like middle school and elementary, just to like build up that base like just before they join the JCL, so that once we all like graduate and stuff, there'll be enough like young people to like refill in the ranks and like keep membership afloat, essentially.
What are some
And
of the ideas that you have for the middle school torch?
hmm, um it's basically, I wanted it to look similar to the main torch, just a bit shorter, so that it's not like, oh, I have to flip through like 32 pages of stuff that I'm not necessarily into. Like that sort of thing. Just like to introduce people to the JCL, have them see what it's all about, and like, yeah, they should join, essentially.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading that and working with you on that. When so pivoting a little bit, you've been
Also,
go ahead.
also, I had like another thing where I was like planning to host these like educational essentially gatherings on Zoom for like state and local editors, or basically anyone who makes a publication. Because I know when I was first starting out as a school editor, like JUMAG sort of has a learning curve to it. And then when I was like surveying the editors around my state, I found that like there weren't as many publications as there should ideally be. And then I was brainstorming a list of reasons why this might be. And I said, oh, maybe it's because the editors have like varying levels of familiarity with all these editing software. So just basically to set it all straight, I'm thinking of like hosting at least one seminar for basically anyone who's interested in learning about editing software. And for those of you who are like more advanced, like, oh, I don't need to know all the basics, I've been doing this for a while, I was thinking of like hosting this separate advanced session as well. So it's really for everyone who wants to learn.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to those also because I think everyone needs an editor, and these skills, nobody's born knowing how to use this software. So I'm looking forward to that. And that leads really well into my next question, which is editor is not an office that every club in JCL has. Most clubs have a president and a vice president, and a secretary or a communications coordinator or something like that. And then when you get to some of the offices like parliamentarian or treasurer or editor, not all the clubs have that. And some of that, I think, is that it can be intimidating to write a publication from scratch. And a lot of editors, particularly local editors, when they're starting out, aren't very used to getting other people in their clubs to write stuff, to submit articles. So they really end up being both writer and editor. They put together the entire publication themselves, and that can be very intimidating. So what would you say, what advice would you give to those folks who are thinking about starting a local publication but are kind of intimidated by that blank white sheet?
It does not have to be this monstrous thing. First of all, just work with what you have so far and make that the best that you can be. If you can only scrap up like a couple of articles and like you can only have like a couple of people working on it, that's not a big deal. Just like start with what you have, build on it, and then like disseminate that, like spread that your publication out to others so that they have access to it. They can see what you're doing and stuff, and maybe that will encourage them to submit to your publication more so you can grow it and stuff. But essentially, all you have to do is start somewhere. So don't be afraid to just have one.
And the biggest bit of advice I'd give, if I can jump in with a little bit of editing experience myself, is know your audience. Know the people in your club, know what they're interested in reading, and try and produce something that they will want to read. Because if people are excited to read your publication, it can help bring people to your club meetings, honestly. Like, if they know, oh, a copy of The Torch is coming out today, I'm going to go pick it up because it's funny and there's a crossword puzzle in it that I like to do that. And it can help with your club membership, it can help with engagement. Which leads me to my next question for you, Irene, which is you've now been a local editor, a state editor, a national editor, and at each of those steps, your audience has changed. So, how has your approach to writing for an audience and putting together a publication changed at each of those steps?
Um, I guess like for the local one, I was really more focused on like what would appeal to like my school. So like basically smaller scale stuff. Um, and then that's essentially like one of the points for like my torch survey that I released, is that I could get a bigger feel for the audience I had as like a national editor, just to get a bigger feel of what they wanted essentially. So basically it just sort of grew in scope, but like essentially what my goal is basically the same. It's like to appeal, like have common ground, like write about things that people can relate to essentially.
Gotcha. So as you go up and the audience becomes broader, there are going to be fewer direct shared experiences. They don't all have the same Latin teacher anymore, like they maybe did when you were a local editor. But there are still common experiences that you can write to. Is that fair to say?
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha. So I keep looking over here because I've got all my notes on this other monitor. With the other national officer interviews, I made reference to their intro letters that they sent at the beginning of their terms, which is something that we do when the national officers get elected. We have them each introduce themselves to the committee members. And Irene's has a big long list of things that she's done, any of which would make for a great thumbnail for this video. I haven't picked, because we're pre-recording this, I don't have to pick the thumbnail before we start the show. So she said that your pre-JCL childhood was colorful, filled with dabblings in horseback riding, tennis, golf, swimming, ice skating, ballet, fencing, taekwondo, piano, violin, flute, robotics, programming, writing, science camp, drawing camp, sewing, French, Spanish, and more. That is quite a resume. Can you tell us about some of those? Which of those was your favorite? Have any of them stuck with you? And what was it like just doing all of that when you were a kid?
So basically, like the reason why I did all of that was my mom basically adhered to this philosophy stating like an idle mind is like a devil's workshop. I didn't really like to like sit still and stuff. So yeah, all of those activities. I should probably mention that I didn't put like the same amount of effort into like each one, but like for example, with like the golf,
Mm-hmm.
like that was just like just to have fun and like basically I'd like acquire the skills of golfing so I can say, oh yeah, I know how to golf. I'm not necessarily good at it, but like yeah, I know how to do it. But definitely like my favorite ones out of all of these are probably the taekwondo and the piano and violin and the flute and the writing. Um, so in taekwondo, I started off in third grade. I
Mm-hmm.
started as a third grader, and then I got my first degree black belt when I was in seventh grade, I think.
Congrats.
So yeah, um, pretty fun. Basically, it taught me like discipline and stuff, and I got to kick people, I got to kick things, I got to break bricks, and that was pretty fun. So it like yeah. And then for piano, violin, and flute, I'm really like interested in music. Um, it has always sort of like appealed to me, calmed me down, that sort of thing. My first instrument was the violin, because I saw like Sarah Chang playing Air on the G string, and I thought, hey, that sounds very beautiful. Maybe I could play like that or something. So I asked my mom to sign me up for violin lessons. She said yes. And then I started the violin. And then funny story, I actually wanted to like quit at some point because it's a very hard instrument to learn.
Mm.
And then she said, okay, my mom said, you're not allowed to quit until you can play air on the G string like Sarah Chang. So I asked my violin teacher, hey, for the next song that we're learning, can we play Air on the G String by Sarah Chang? And this is when I was still like learning what the strings were
Mm-hmm.
and like playing Taki Taki Stop Stop, which is like this like bowing exercise. It's very like not it's not the same at all. So yeah, that was a fun moment. And then
So,
in
well,
second
what
grade,
happened?
he left. I don't think he really took my request seriously, which I'm kind of grateful for. It's not like it's not the most technically difficult song, but it's definitely not the one of the first songs you should be learning, if
Okay.
that makes sense. Uh, so I started piano as a second grader, and then I started flute as a fourth grader 2 years later, and then I joined like my school band, and then I played at like solo festivals and stuff, and orchestra.
Which would you play at like solo and ensemble festivals? Flute or piano or violin or?
I did mostly the flute and the piano for that. The violin, I like played it. It was fun, but like I wasn't necessarily like the best at it, you know. Like I
Okay.
was okay, but like I was more comfortable with like the flute and the piano. I'm currently playing Hamburger Sonata, which is like funny name, Hamburger, which is like actually what made me interested in the song in the first place. Because like, ooh, Hamburger Sonata.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's kind of long. It's by Bach. Like not, yeah, it's by Bach. It's kind of long, um, but it's been fun.
And do you keep up with those either taekwondo or any of the instruments still?
Mm, not as intensely as I used to, but I still like I'm still learning the Hamburger Sonata,
Mm-hmm.
and I still like am playing the piano, and I occasionally go to the taekwondo lessons, but not as often as I used to because there's like a higher jump between the belts before black belt and then the belts afterward. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot more intensity in the training and stuff.
Yeah, it's
So
as hard to get a second degree as it is to get your whole first degree, right?
yeah.
Like it's as hard to go from one to two as it is from nothing to one.
hmm
Gotcha. So, a technical question for you, just because, I've never played the piano and I've always been very envious of people who can. When you're using the violin, or you're particularly with the flute,
hmm
you're using both hands to play one note.
You play the
Uh,
flute.
hmm? Yeah, I do.
I yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. And so I play one note at a time, right? And both of my hands are working together and they're doing a single fingering, and I know what those are. Now, with piano, you're using the two hands to do different things. And
Mm.
what is that like? What is it? How do you keep it straight in your head? And particularly going from violin, you said you started with violin, where again, I'm presuming that you're basically, I mean, you're doing different things with your two hands, but you're playing one note at a time. Um, to using two hands to do completely different notes with potentially different rhythms and things like that. What's that like mentally?
You definitely have to focus more, and it takes more time to like learn the songs on the violin and the piano because of that. It's an interesting like mental exercise. Like both of your hands are doing different things. Um, Especially for piano because you're not allowed to look at your hands, but you're not allowed to do that for flute either. Or
No, it would be very hard to do that.
just like, no. But essentially what you just like, divide and conquer. That's a dependable strategy. You start with one hand and then you add the other hand and you just break up the music into chunks too. So I guess in that sense, music kind of helped me with planning and stuff. And like, yeah.
Okay, so you start with one hand for a chunk of music and you learn how to do it well enough that you've got some muscle memory around it, and then you do the same with the other hand and then you start to bring them together. Is that
For piano.
for
Yeah.
piano? Okay. Gotcha. Okay, let's see. Yes, the very multi-talented Irene. All this uh, robotics camp and goodness everything. So one thing I wanted to ask about, you said you were very much into spelling bee when you were younger. How does one get into the spelling bee competition, and how do you practice for that? Do you have like a coach, or do you work with your parents, or?
I had my parents really helped me like drill in the words. And the words like they come in a mix of like given words like a word list
Mm.
and like words that they surprise you with. So I basically mixed my preparation in terms of that. And I focused more on the words that were like a surprise. So I could like because that's not something you can really prepare for. That's just something that as you acquire more words, it becomes easier to guess the spelling. And also, as you become more familiar with like root words and stuff, like the etymology of a word, that also helps with spelling, especially for like the Latin words,
Hmm.
because the English words that come from Latin look very similar to for the most part, the Latin words, the original ones that they came from. So,
So
yeah.
did you ultimately find that studying Latin helped you with spelling bee, or vice versa?
Yeah. Yeah, I think isn't it like half of the words or like a significant chunk of the words in English are from Latin, um, and yeah, it helped a lot basically. I it like especially like the prefixes and stuff because sometimes a word looks like all intimidating on its own, and then it's just like a prefix plus something I'm more familiar with or something like that. So it kind of helped too in that sense.
Okay. So are you still doing spelling bee competitions, or?
No, 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 no. They're fourth grade to eighth grade.
Oh, okay. So you had a couple of years in there because you said you started Latin in sixth, so there were a few years where you were doing both.
I started like the spelling bee in fifth grade.
Hmm.
Um, that was when I first like really got into it because I earned like second place
Wow.
um, for my very first spelling bee, and like I was kind of proud of myself. There was like a little bit where like me and the person who eventually won were like going back and forth between like words, and that was kind of intense. So that was what really got me into the spelling bee.
Okay. And now you get to express that competitive spirit in JCL competitions. You said
Yeah,
academics, particularly, and
yeah.
art. What are some of the arts that you enter in at nationals and state?
I go for as many categories as possible, the graphic arts at least. So yeah, as many like all of them basically. There's only like one or two that I don't do.
Okay. Next thing on my list to talk about is Star Wars.
Yes,
I know that
yes.
you are a Star Wars fan. Let's talk about that.
hmm Um, I first got into the Star Wars franchise when my mom showed me like A New Hope before the release of The Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mostly into like the Star Wars for like people who don't know is divided into like the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. And I'm mostly into like the prequels and stuff. So I'm not really into like the new movies. I mean, they're okay, but they just don't pique my interest as much as like the prequels.
The prequels have a lot of meme potential, that's for sure.
Yes, yes, the memes are hilarious. They're the best memes around, arguably.
Yep.
They
Well,
are.
I think the Lord of the Rings ones are good too, but the Lord of the Rings movies are longer and harder to watch all the way through. So, which of the prequel movies would you say is your favorite?
Revenge of the Sith
Oh,
by a
okay.
long shot.
Oh, why is that?
Um, I don't know. Attack of the Clones just felt kind of dull. I was skipping all the parts of Anakin. I was just going straight to Obi-Wan because he's like my favorite character in the entire franchise. Actually, he's my favorite character in like of all time. So I was just watching his part, so that chopped the movie in half. And the Phantom Menace was when Jar Jar's like annoyance levels were at its peak.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And Revenge of the Sith is just very interesting to see like Anakin fall from like this really selfless, kind Jedi and his corruption or his
Is he
corruption
kind though? I know they
kind of the Clone Wars,
in
the TV
the TV
show.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one of the strengths of like the Clone Wars TV show is that it helps supplement the movies. Like it shows some like moments that the movies didn't have time to show, I guess. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of kind moments of him in like the animated series, Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
Yeah. So, Revenge of the Sith definitely has some good Obi-Wan Kenobi moments. Are you excited for the possible upcoming Obi-Wan show?
Yes, yes, I've been like looking into it. I've been following the news. I was like really excited when Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan's actor, said like he retried on the outfit. I'm like, yes, it's happening. It's happening. So, didn't it used to be a movie? They were like planning for it to become a movie, right? And then they said, uh, yeah, that's what I heard. They were. It was supposed to be a movie at least. That was like the rumor was it there was going to be a Kenobi movie, and then people said, "Oh, let's just make it into this TV show." And at first, I was kind of bummed out, but then I realized that TV shows you can really get into the characters more, I guess, and spend more time on like character development and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be fun. You said you've been following the news on it. Do you know when that's supposed to come out? Have they started working on it?
I think it's next year.
Okay.
I think there was something about like they had to rewrite the script or something because they thought it was too similar to the Mandalorian, but I think they're like it's coming together now from what I heard.
Okay. Well, I know Obi-Wan is a lot of people's favorite character. He's probably my favorite character too. Um,
Oh, so
he's very sassy, and particularly in Revenge of the Sith, which is great. So
he's also like, bastion of the light.
yeah,
Never
he's a good Jedi, and he's
yeah.
not. He's not. I don't know if you've read the books. I'm betraying myself. I'm one of those people who's read Star Wars books. Um, and I won't say how many, but Obi Wan's an interesting guy because he's not the strongest Force user. He does not have the most midichlorians, I guess now, because of the prequels we have midichlorians. Um, he doesn't have the monstrously strong connection to the Force that like Anakin and Yoda do. He's just a guy who's okay at the Force, and he's very dutiful, and he's really good at what is it, Form 4 of lightsaber fighting. Um,
Three.
is
I
it
think
Form
it's
3?
yeah.
Okay, the defensive one, the primarily defensive, whose name I ought to know, and I'm just blanking on it. I'll remember it in 5 minutes. Ataru, isn't that the name of it?
That's the Form 4 one. That's the one that he used to do because that's the one that Qui Gon, his mentor, used to do.
That's
But
right.
then he switched over to Sarasu.
Suresu, yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he did. He's good at it. He just and he becomes the Suresu master.
Mhm.
Love him. Hardworking guy, very noble character.
Like
The quintessential Jedi.
the worst things happen to him. Like his mentor dies, his
Mm.
love interest, because like the Clone Wars TV show added a love interest to Obi-Wan. She dies.
Hmm.
His everyone he loves as like a Jedi dies, Anakin falls to the dark side. Just like all of these bad things happen, and yet he's still fundamentally good. He doesn't ever stray from that. So that's that's something I admire about him.
Yeah, he's a good character. Man, now I'm excited for that show. Do you know, is it HBO or who's going to put it out?
Disney Plus.
Disney, of course, right. Well, I guess I'll have to get a Disney Plus subscription.
Oh, so you haven't seen The Mandalorian?
No, I know I need to. The big news this week at least was that Baby Yoda has a name now, right?
Yes, it's Grogu.
Grogu, yes. So I heard that through social media, but I didn't actually watch the show. So at some point, excuse me, at some point I'll have to get Disney Plus, binge The Mandalorian. That'll be a good thing to do over Christmas break. Do what?
For Yoda.
I didn't catch that.
Just do it for Baby Yoda.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes. Yeah. Mandalorians are cool. Everybody, I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a Jedi, and my best friend wanted to be Boba Fett. He wanted to be a bounty hunter, so now the Mandalorians have their own TV show. It's great. This is probably normally the part in the show when we'd say, oh, so-and-so in the chat is asking you some question that's relevant to JCL, and we'd get back on topic, but we don't have that, so we can keep talking about Star Wars. I'm mostly out of things to talk about. Is there any advice that you'd give to a first-year JCL or somebody who's just starting out?
Oh, okay. Start with like your local club, because I don't know, the state and national conventions, when I first heard about them, they just sounded like these big important things that I felt really intimidated by. So just first start getting into like your local club, and then go to like your state convention and just see what that's all about, and then go to nationals if you can, because that's a fun event, really. You can't beat an in-person nationals, but like virtual nationals was fun as well. But yeah, just basically like start from things you can most access and build your way up from there, essentially.
Awesome. Was there... Oh, we were going to talk about the team editor shirts. We were talking about that before the show. Yeah, I was going to tell you the story of how those started. So this is the deep lore of the team editor shirts, y'all. Never before revealed. And it's the story is that in many years ago, I guess I've shown you what year I was in JCL Editor by showing you the back of my shirt earlier. But about that time, the office of NJCL Editor was very much like the post of Defense Against the Dark Arts in Harry Potter, in that, those of you who know the Harry Potter lore know that ever since Dumbledore refused the office of Defense Against the Dark Arts to Tom Riddle, who later became Voldemort, no teacher stayed for more than 1 year, right? Everybody would work for 1 year and then something tragic would happen to them. In the same way, the office of editor seemed cursed that it was unopposed for 10 years in a row. That one person would run for the office unopposed and they would win. And people just weren't as interested in editor as other offices. And it was, parliamentarians were tearing their hair out trying to get people to run for office, trying to get multiple people to run for NJCL Editor. We always had an editor, and it was a series of good editors over those 10 years, but it's always nice to have multiple candidates for office. So we said, let's try and drum up interest in NJCL Editor. Let's make t-shirts. So we made t-shirts that say team editor on the front and say your last name and your year of office on the back. And we started wearing these t-shirts on state t-shirt day and building this hype around team. And the other thing about team editor is that it really is a real thing. It wasn't just t-shirts, because if you look at, and I'm probably going to get some people in the chat who are mad at me for saying this, if you look at the people who come back to National Convention year after year after year, overwhelmingly the former NJCL officers who stick around are editors. There are more former editors who keep coming back to Nationals than any other office. They work on the convention ear, they do SCL stuff, and we're talking like for decades. These people come back. There are some very dedicated former NJCL parliamentarians who come back. There are a couple of outstanding former NJCL historians who come back. But editors, far and away, come back the most. Nobody knows exactly why, but that's a cool thing. And we really do have this team editor spirit where if somebody needs something done, a picture taken, an article written, a layout blocked or whatever, you can ask somebody because there's a whole crew. We usually have about a dozen former editors who, we just got a subscriber. But we're not streaming. Somebody just subscribed to us on YouTube, so the notification's going to show up. That's rare. Okay. There are usually at least 10 former NJCL and NSCL editors at a national convention at any given time. So we all have the t-shirts, and we started doing these t-shirts, and then all the older folks were like, hang on, wait a minute, I want a t-shirt too. So then we had t-shirts for everybody. So there are people who are going around with t-shirts that say like 88 on the back because they were NJCL editor in 1988, 42 years ago. 32 years ago. Never do math on stream. Never do math on stream. You'll embarrass yourself. Particularly the more math education you have, the less you should do math on stream because you'll just embarrass yourself like I just did. But yeah, decades ago, these people are coming back. So team editor, it's a real thing. It's not just the t-shirt. But then we found that, by building up some hype around the group and recognizing that team editor really has this good bond where we all work together and we all like each other, we have had more interest in the office, and there have been more contested elections. So we broke the curse. After 10 solid years of no opposition in the race, the curse has been broken, and now we regularly have multiple candidates. One time, a couple of years ago, we even had 3 candidates. Three pre-filed candidates for NJCL editors. So that was fun. Anyway, that's the story. Do what?
Sorry, weren't there like 3 pre-filed ones this year?
I don't remember. I wasn't paying super close attention to the race. Yeah, elections this year were a little bit different because of being virtual and everything. But for those of you out there who are interested in running for NJCL editor, go for it. You get a t-shirt. None of the other offices get a cool t-shirt. Okay, well, we've got a couple minutes. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about or anything else you wanted to say?
Guess read The Torch US. It's a fun read. I highly recommend.
Absolutely. I was telling Irene before the show started that we're going to have a read through of The Torch on one of these JCLive shows to make up for the fact that this interview of hers is not doesn't have the live chat with it where people can interact with her directly. So it just so happens, the torches are released on March 1st, June 1st, September 1st, and December 1st. So it so happens that March 1st, 2021 is a Monday. And this show is on Mondays. So the day that torch comes out, Irene's going to come on and take us through it, tell us all about her thought process in writing it, laying it out, editing it, getting some viewer-submitted articles, things like that. And we'll do a major breakdown of the torch, and she'll take us all the way through the editing process. So that's going to be a really awesome stream. Mark your calendars for March 1st. Otherwise, yes, please remember to subscribe to the Torch US. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already, and hit the like button if you can down below. I also would appreciate it if people leave comments, particularly on these pre-recorded videos. If folks can leave comments, it'll help the channel, but then it'll also give us a chance to get some feedback from y'all, because I won't be watching the live show. Irene will be watching the live show when it premieres, and some of the other officers will be helping moderate the chat, but I will be on holiday, so I'm not going to be able to do that. With that, Irene, if there's nothing else, thanks so much for coming on the show, talking about Star Wars, talking about your many talents, talking about editing, all this kind of stuff. Irene's a junior. For those of you who don't know, junior from Ohio, so you've got more JCL to come. Looking forward to the rest of this year, your next year, and then, of course, SCL years.
Yes.
Working on the convention year is a lot of fun. It really is.
It looks like it. Like, just based on like what I've seen in the year, like that just looks so much fun.
It's a
Like all the
blast.
satire and stuff. And
All the what?
The satire and the sarcasm. I really like that's the kind of things I really am into.
Yeah. Well, it'll be waiting for you when you make it to SCL, and you can join the proud tradition of former NJCL editors coming back and continuing to contribute at nationals. With that, that's our show, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said, please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment, particularly on these pre-recorded videos. We will be back next week with a state spotlight on the good state of Florida. We talked about that a little bit in the intro. They've been doing a lot this year, a lot of initiatives that we're going to talk about. It'll be a really good show. So we'll see you next Monday, which should be Monday, December 28th, if I remember right. Everybody have a Merry Christmas between now and then, because this show is coming out on the 21st, and that'll be the 28th. So in between is the 25th. So have a good Christmas, and we'll see you next Monday. Thanks so much. Cheers.
Thank you.